J-Rock, welcome back to the podcast. How are you?
Living very well, my man. How about yourself today?
Another day in paradise. Chicago, Illinois is warming up. People are walking around like it's 100 out right now. It's only 70, but it's a great time.
Yeah, I don't think I could do it up there. It's hard enough here on the coast. I don't think I could do it.
The summer's great, but the winter's tough. And I think the last time we spoke, and that hasn't been released yet because it's a top secret project, but that interview will come out soon enough. And it's a key part of our next audio documentary series. But man, we had such a good connection on the call. I thought, let's get you back on here to tell your story. So why don't you just introduce yourself to the listeners here? Who are we hearing from?
Yeah, been hiding out in these shadows, in these dark corners for years, just doing some work, but behind the curtain a little bit with a lot of guys. Been in business. This is my 26th year in business after the conclusion of this season. Under the auspices of Raw 2 for 1, we've been in business for 21 years. We pretty much started like 1999, late 99. But then before that, I was just J-Rock helping some kids out. And that started in 95. First ever student was Brett Matter. Some people may know him as NCAA Division I national champ, 157 pounds, University of Pennsylvania. He was a monster at UPenn, 2-time All-American. He won the EIWAs every year, won 30 plus matches every year. 2-time state champ out of Delran, coached by Dennis Smith for the Delran Bears. He was a monster. His dad was a 2-time national champ for Penn State, Andy. So he had a brother also that wrestled with him at UPenn, Clint. So he's been around the sport. He was involved in a lot of stuff, and his dad brought him to me, and I was able to get my paws on him and add some small and details to his game and help him out a little bit. And then the sport for me just opened up because Brett's dad brought me into the coaching realm. I had no interest in coaching or developing somebody or working with somebody. I had my own stuff I was trying to get going. And Brett's dad pretty much gave me that direction. And once he put me on that path, without him even realizing he put me on that path, once he put me on that path, I was on my way and just started doing things from there. And you're working with Brett. Oh, you're working with that. Just the numbers just built and built and built. And then I added this kid and that kid, Clinton Hicks, Micah Khan, all kinds of guys that were making the state finals or winning state titles, Mark Thompson. So that first 5 years, aside from just Brett, that first 5 years, I had a lot of success. And so people were just falling out of the sky. And I had to kind of figure myself out. What is it that I want to do here? Do I want to actually have a club and not just work with people? So then I turned it into an actual club, gave it a name and all of that stuff. And then, so we've been rocking and rolling ever since.
And so you're based out of initially the Jersey area when you were at Trenton State, and you're out of where now?
We're in PA. So I've been in PA. I've been in PA for the last, say 5 years. So the first 20 years I was in Dirty Jersey. But my talent pool is about 5 or 6 states: Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, obviously Jersey, Virginia, and then we tap into New York, very small areas in New York. We do hit some pockets there. It's very difficult for people from New York to get down to me because you got to get through the city. Yeah. Anytime you have to go through New York City to get somewhere, you got to add 3 to 4 hours on your trip.
Oof. And we're going to get into some of the guys you've worked with because it's an incredible list. Let's start in the J-Rock family, though. Where did you grow up and how did you find wrestling?
I grew up in Baltimore City, born and raised in Baltimore City. I lived actually for first up through like 2nd, 3rd grade, maybe even 4th grade. I lived right next to where the Orioles played. So I was at Orioles games all the time, had my hat, had my glove, went to all the Orioles games, Al Bumry, all of those guys. I was really into baseball. The Colts were big at that time. So in Baltimore, the Colts are actually in Baltimore. A lot of people don't know that. So the Colts, before they got to Indianapolis through some nasty and grindy stuff, they were actually in Baltimore.
Rest in peace, Colts.
Yes. So, but yeah, so I grew up in the city, and then we had I had no brothers, no sisters, didn't have a dad. So I had no exposure to any kind of wrestling definitely wasn't a thing in Baltimore City. So I grew up on football and basketball. Too short for basketball, way too short. Football, a little small, but loved the contact, loved the aggressiveness of it. I enjoyed football for a lot of different reasons. So I played football all the way up through pretty much through graduation. Basketball, I'll explain that story a little later. Played that up through freshman year in high school.
Let's hear it. What happened freshman year?
So freshman year, my mom wanted to move me out of she was about to move. We lived in Baltimore County while I was in middle school. And my mom was about to move back into the city for, the next couple of years due to her job. So knowing that she was about to move back into the city, she wanted me to be away from that environment during my high school years. And so when she tried to move me away from that environment, she moved me into my grandmom. So I moved my grandmom so I went from Baltimore City, which you see lots of stuff on, to Morristown High School, not Morris in North Jersey, but Moores in South. And it was actually voted the #1 town in the United States of America. So totally different environment. So I did that for high school. And then there, I really got introduced to wrestling. I saw it in middle school because they had it as a middle school, like for gym. They had wrestling for gym. And I had to walk out and I guess I won like 7th grade or something like that to be like one guy and for gym. And then I had to walk out and wrestle a guy by the name of Nick Ridosi. And he was like a state champ, junior level state champ. And here I am with I got maybe 15 minutes of wrestling experience. He pinned me first period. I don't even know what happened, but it was in front of the whole school. They canceled school for the day and run like pretty much the wrestling tournament. So the entire student body is in the gymnasium, including teachers, principals, so on and so forth. So everybody saw me get picked up and body slammed through the earth by Nick.
This is in middle school?
Yeah. So that was like my introduction to it. I was like, yeah, this is not for me. And in 8th grade, I came back. I believe I won it in 8th grade, like 2-1. I don't even know how I scored or what I did. But then when I got to Morristown for high school, I was actually, this is probably the most interesting piece to the story, is that I've always wanted to play basketball, always wanted to play football. So I played football in the fall, basketball in winter, and then would run track in the spring, off in the summer. So during the winter, I was playing basketball. I was a starting guard for the team. It's Morristown. It's not like Camden High or Dunbar or anything like that, but Morristown, just playing for the freshman team. But for Christmas, for the holidays, I wanted to come back and spend the holiday with my mom. My mom still lived in Baltimore. So for Christmas, I came back, spent the holiday with my mother. So the way that the head coach, Mr. Wright, of the rest of the basketball team had it was, if you miss any games, if you miss any practices, you will get demoted. So you lose your spot. And I was okay with that. That's your way of doing things. I can't argue that. So I left, went to do holiday, came back, started doing practices. So I sat out a game, sat out 2 games, sat out 3 games. So I was like, yeah, this is getting out of control because I was the starter. It's like, how long are you gonna have me playing this, second fiddle, which I don't feel like I should be playing second fiddle. So anyway, the wrestling team caught wind of it. A lot of wrestlers were on the football team. So I knew a lot of those guys. And they were like, man, you should come over to wrestling. Yeah, you should come over here. And I was like, man, leave me alone. I don't know nothing about no wrestling. My last experience with Nick Ridosi was not a good one. I do not want to revisit that. Leave me out of the picture. So they continued to encourage me and try to entice me to come around to it. So eventually, after sitting out another game or 2, I was like, I'm going to give this wrestling thing a try. And the assistant football coach happened to be the head wrestling coach. And so he kind of strong-armed it and was like, Johnny, you should do this. This is right up your alley. This is X, Y, and Z. I was like, oh, wow, wide-eyed, right? It's like, oh, okay, I'll do it. And he's like, oh, a varsity letter? Wow. Yeah. So I took a shot, and I got the first match. It was maybe a Tuesday or Wednesday night. We were wrestling Cinnaminson, which was a neighboring town. And I wound up pinning the guy. Don't ask me how or even why, but I pinned a guy by the name of Tim Widener. And so it was, the papers went nuts. I got interviewed. They're sticking mics in my face at the end of the match, and everybody's putting out hot in the presses for the next day. I got my name announced the next day for the announcements in the morning. Everybody's patting you on the back. Great job. That was awesome. Showing you the newspaper clippings and everything. I was like, man, I could get used to this. Never mind the fact I got pinned in a double armbar the following dual meet in the first period. Never mind that by a guy by the name of Athern from Northern Burlington. I was already hooked. I was already hooked and addicted to this, the winning concept and what it could do for you and how it made you feel and things like that. So that's my story. It was an interesting way to get involved in the sport. And I wrestled maybe like 15 matches as a freshman, went 9-7-1 or something like that. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just out there. I was an athlete. I didn't like losing. So that helped me out a little bit. But other than that, I didn't know what I was doing as a freshman. But I wound up finishing second in the district, and it gave me enough hunger and desire to want to continue the sport, because that was a real question for me. Do I want to keep doing this, or do I want to go back to basketball? So that was a real balancing act that I had to come to grips with. And after I figured it out, I was like, I think I'll try wrestling. It does fit my personality. I was very aggressive, physical, liked contact and things like that. So I was like, it fits my personality. It's individualized. I don't have to rely on A, B, or C, or X, Y, and Z in order to be successful. It'll be about me. So I immediately started going to, even though I was running track and all of that stuff, I immediately started going to the basement and just started lifting weights and stuff. I didn't know what I was doing, reading muscle and fitness magazines. Hey, look at Albert Haney and all these other guys, what these guys are doing, or Lee Haney, what these guys are doing, and just started lifting some weights in the basement.
How fun is that journey though? When you start it and you have a new purpose, it's exciting.
Yeah, wrestling. So your title is me. It did change my life, because the course that I was going was something completely different. Basketball, never going to be pro level, never going to make it to even, play point guard for the Tar Heels, alongside Michael Jordan or anything like that. So I was doing that more for recreational purposes. I loved it. I had a passion for it. I enjoyed it. So I stuck to it. Football was just too small. Mm-hmm. I wasn't, even the safeties today and even the corners are, 225 pounds and stuff like that. So I was never going to get to that stage in my career. So wrestling actually did change my life, because it actually, all of the energy, the athleticism, the willingness to learn, and the hunger and stuff that I had, it actually gave me a viable option, something that I can actually attach myself to and say, you know what, I think I can really do this moving forward, not just in a recreational sense, but to be able to utilize it and to have a purpose for it and help out a college team, to help out somebody down the road, so on and so forth. So it really did change my life. The sport really changed my life. It wasn't just a saying. It really did. It gave me a direction.
When did you know you were going to keep it going after high school?
Well, so David Eisenhower, so my high school coach was Jack Welch, who, God rest his soul. He was the glue for high school. I didn't know what I was doing, and he was really good. He never killed me. Like, you stink, you suck, you got to get. I didn't know anything, and he knew I didn't know anything. So he did. I never was under the same scoring system as other guys on the team who had been spending 10, 15 years in the sport. So he was a lot tougher on those guys. On me,
he kept you in it too. I love that. Like, he didn't run you out. He kept you in it and kept you loving it.
Smart man. Jack Welch was a smart man. So Hall of Famer at the high school level, South Jersey Hall of Famer. But so he was like, hey, what do you want to do in terms of college and things like that? And at that time, I'm like, man, I don't see how a college team would want me as a wrestler. So, but he kept talking to me and explaining to me some of the process. And I was actually getting letters after my junior year. I took top 8, I finished 7. And I was getting letters from people, and I was like, how? I didn't even know how the process worked. I knew nothing of it. But I was getting letters from Naval Academy, Bloomsburg, and Bloomsburg was top 10 at the time. Lock Haven was top 10 at the time. Naval Academy, so on and so forth. So I was like, this probably could work for me if I really, which I was already committed, but if I really commit myself, I think I can really find some direction with this. And so from the college perspective, my senior year, I had the Knicks football, which that was my lifetime love. Herschel Walker, Tony Dorsett, Bo Jackson. I grew up watching all of these superstars. So to me, that was like I was letting go of something I really had a love for, a passion for. But I gave up on it because I said, I can't give up those 3 months that I need to learn. I need to work. So I spent the 3 months that I would have been playing football normally and just continue to do some wrestling practice after school, whether I was just grabbing a couple guys, a couple bodies, go in the wrestling room and work some stuff. For me, that was a lot because I didn't have a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, the kids that I coach today, I got 10-year-olds that are better technically than I was as a senior in high school. My 10-year-olds know more than I knew at that time. So I just had a lot to work on. So I utilized that. And then I was ranked number 2 in the state. I was number 1 in the state was Van Doren from North Hunterdon. Van Doren wound up winning it. I lost in the semifinals to Mark Farmer, 6-5. Van Doren beat Farmer. I wound up coming back for 3rd, beat Smith from Roxbury, and then 2-1. And then the college coaches are running out of the stands. The high school states were in Princeton University. So high school coaches running out of stands. Hey, what do you think? What do you think? Would you like to come? I'm in tears because I lost in the semifinals. Like I'm like, snot bubbles the whole 9. My mom's like in the back. And David Eisenhower, the head coach at Trenton State College, comes over and is like, hey man, you're pretty tough. Would you like to wrestle for me? His tone was different than a lot of the other coaches, number 1. But then number 2, my question to him was, being impatient and not knowing enough about the game. I was like, I'm going to start right away. Like, I didn't know you should redshirt. You can lift weights in the off season. You can develop technically. Like, I didn't think of any of that. I didn't know enough about the sport to have that kind of insight. So to me, I was like, I want to start as a freshman. And so Eisenhower promised me an opportunity to start as a freshman. I won the starting spot as a freshman for Eisenhower. That's kind of like, that's the springboard.
And Trenton State College, D3 at the time, right?
D3 at the time was at that time when I was getting recruited by Trenton State, they were the number 1 team in the country and had won maybe like 4 or 5 of the last 10, 11 national titles. When I got to college, Ithaca was also good. Augsburg became really high quality. Wartburg became high quality. And then plus us. So when I was in college, those 4 programs were the tops. But during the 10 years before I got to Trenton State was probably the top program over that span.
What was the transition like into your college years from coming from high school?
Yeah, hard. I can recall a freshman at my freshman year being in practice. Even a guy I beat out because I had to beat 2 or 3 guys to make the starting spot. Even one of the guys I beat out, we were doing top and bottom. And I don't know how long I was down there, maybe 75 hours. I got a pillow, night light. I was down, I could not get out. And he rode me like a mule. I felt embarrassed. I actually got up, threw my headgear and said, I hate wrestling. I'm never coming back. I stormed out of the room. And I was like, I hate wrestling. I never want to do this. I mean, I just wasn't there. I didn't know enough. I mean, it was very eye-opening to see. I knew there was a gap. So you got to figure I'm operating on. So I had a full year my junior year, full year my senior year, 3/4 of a season my sophomore year. And then if you add that with my quarter season for my freshman year, so I got 3 years of experience.
Yeah.
No off season. Wasn't like Fargo training in the off season, like nothing. It was just three months each year. So I literally had, in my 3 years of wrestling experience, by the time I got into college, was literally less than a full year of experience because I only had 9 months. So I had 9 months of training. Imagine that today. Imagine a Mark Hall or Kirk Fleet or Gabe Stevenson. Imagine these guys, RBY, going into college trying to compete with 9 months of experience.
Couldn't do it.
Yeah, right. There's no way. So
yeah.
I was so far behind. And I didn't know how far behind I was, but I knew I was behind. And then when I got to college, I really found out how far behind I was. Like it was eye-opening to just see. It was like, I'm looking up at where these guys are and they're way off. They're way off in the distance. Like I'm nowhere even close to these guys. So I knew there was some work ahead of me. And and I paid some dues and put some work in and tried to catch up.
And outside of just hard work or just grinding it out, was there anything you did that enabled you to kind of transition? And because you were a 3-time All-American there, anything you did that you can distinctly remember as was a big turning point for you to really move you into that next level?
So I taught myself wrestling. So you got to remember, so you're talking about, 1990, there's no YouTube, there's no internet, there's no Instagram, there's no Twitter. There's nothing to help you really catch up. So we're talking about a period of time where Iowa Public Television, IPTV, you could purchase videos from them. So the Iowa versus Penn State duel, the Iowa versus Iowa State duel, whatever the situation may be, Oklahoma State, whatever. You could purchase the tape on VHS. I don't know if the kids at home understand what VHS is. So anyway, so you could purchase it on VHS, but everything's 4 to 6 weeks. Nothing's like today on a smartphone, right? Like I want to see SATF today, type in SATF, 100 things pop up. I want to see, whomever, type it in and it comes right up. Yeah, we didn't have that in, 1990-ish. So for me, I was ordering a lot of videos from Iowa Public Television and stuff like that later in the game, once I started college, because I didn't really see any of that in high school. I didn't really see anything. I saw like one college match. I had one camp that we went to, I believe it was, we went to a Penn State camp because it happened to be in Jersey at the Shore after my junior year. And I wound up going to that camp and they showed, I guess, Penn State versus somebody, since it was a Penn State camp. They showed Penn State, can't remember if it was Iowa or whatever. And so they showed one match. So that pretty much summed up my ability or my capacity to see college wrestling while in high school. Was I got to see one match, one match on VHS at a camp. One match, meaning one weight class. Yeah. One actual match, not a meet. So anyway, so when I got to college, I was like, I need to get more involved in the game and learn more about who some of these stars are. And I was a straight nerd still in. Straight nerd, boom, let me watch this, let me see this. How's that happening? What are they doing? How long did they do that? And I studied everything as much as I could and was teaching myself technique. Popular athletes at that time, John Smith was the best American at the time. So I watched, as much of John Smith as I could. Very, very fortunate at my college, Dave Eisenhower ran camps, clinics with John Smith on campus. So I was pretty much like, I snuggled up underneath John Smith or what's next. I was his dummy, show moves on me. I want to watch as much as I can, learn as much as I can, absorb as much as I can. So I got a lot of just small, intricate details from John Smith at that time. 2 or 3 years, he was there for camp, like maybe 3 years. But I was there every summer, getting as much as I can, and then just watching as much video as I could. But I was teaching myself, okay, what's this? And I was calling stuff names that wasn't a real name, because I don't know what the name of it is. I'm watching somebody do it. I'm watching Tom Brands and Terry Brands too, but Tom won the Olympics with it. Watching Tom Brands do this spin behind on people. And he would spin. And as you know, when people spin, the opponent sticks the arm out and block to whatever side you go to. So what Tom would do is have these double fish hooks. So he would be fish hooking, snap the guy. He would not get his arm stuck underneath. He wouldn't go to the front lock. He would always be over the top button in a controlled fashion, not chest wrap, fish hooks in the armpits. And he'd snap the guy and then block 2 hands to one side and then spin to that side and nobody could stop him. Whether it was Sean Charles or Terry wrestling Prescott, which Prescott was hurt in that match, but you get the point. So that rub the tummy. I'm sure they don't call it rub the tummy. I just call it rub the tummy because I'm like, okay, so what's he doing there? It looks like he's rubbing his belly in order to spin behind. So rub the tummy. And I've been teaching that for 26 years. So my kids know it as rub the tummy. Yeah. So I was teaching myself moves as I was watching matches and kind of without having the fine point detail of each technique, just what I could see on a screen and trying to pick up on as much as I could and kind of trying to formulate a style off of that. Best college wrestlers at the time, of course, John Smith, but also Jack Kuvo was pretty good. 89-0 his last 2 seasons, 2-time national champion those last 2 seasons, 44-0, 45-0, wrestled for East Stroudsburg. But his style of wrestling was, I'm going to take you down and let you up. I'm going to take you down, I'm going to let you up. I'm going to take you down, I'm going to let you up. I'm going to take you down, I'm going to let you up. So he'd have these scores of like 25 to whatever. And I was just like, what is going on here? Like, because you see so much, guys are like, learn how to ride legs, learn how to do an arm bar. You better have a good tilt. You better have your half Nelson together. Like, so, that wasn't for me. I wanted to use my speed. I wanted to use space. I wanted to use my explosiveness, my athleticism. So watching Jack Kuvo, even though he didn't utilize those elements, his style of wrestling was 2-for-1, take you down, let you up. And so I adopted that, and then I ran with it and just used my own, hybrid style of it, hybrid version of it. But the 2-for-1, to take them down, let them up, worked for me, because I wasn't going to turn anybody. I wasn't putting legs in. I don't want to wrestle nut to butt. I don't want to be caught on video like that. I want to be caught on video, lifting you up, slamming you through the earth's surface. That's where I want to be at.
It's a lot more fun to watch too. Illinois is a big takedown, let them up state. So that I'm with you right there with you on that. So if you were, I just want to pick your brain. You have this tremendous catalog of wrestling knowledge in your mind. You're one of the top clinicians and coaches in the country at the high school and youth level. If you were starting with someone from scratch, what's the first thing you would teach them? Would it be like a down block? Would it be a shot? Or would it be like more positioning type stuff?
Stance motion level change, double leg. And then that's your offense. And I'll come back to that in a second. And then defensively, I will teach you a rub the tummy. Because what I want to do defensively is to teach you not to let your opponent in. So I don't co-sign any of this stuff with the let the guy in on your leg, roll to your back, pull his leg over each other. I don't co-sign any of that. I didn't do it as an athlete. I don't favor watching that style, and I definitely wouldn't teach it. I think it's a bad direction to go. But what I would teach him is keep guys off your legs. You want to score points offensively, but defensively, you don't want people to score. So to give you a good illustration, was Jordan Burroughs won nationals in 2009. He won nationals in 2011. 2009, he went 5-0 in nationals. Not one person got in on his legs in 5 matches. Thus, he never got taken down in 5 matches. Thus, he took down everybody in matches and was 5-0.
Yeah.
2011, same thing. 5 matches at the NCAAs. He didn't let any of those 5 guys in. Thus, none of them took him down. He took them down. He went 5-0, won another national title. But that's the concept. The concept is they shoot, they don't get in. The concept is if they shoot, they get in. Oh, now you can reach back and do this. Oh, now you can roll them over the top. Or now you can do your cement mixers and all of this stuff. None of that. Everything is keep the opponent off of your legs. So that's what I would teach young kids. And then from an offensive perspective, once you learn how to do a double leg, you can do any shot, high crotch or wrap single. Because once you learn the body position, head over shoulder, shoulders over hip, hip over knee, once you learn that and you master that, then you can do the same thing. A single is the same body alignment. High crotch is the same body alignment. You can ask John Smith about that. You can ask Zeke Jones about that. You can ask Stephen Abbas about that, because they all broke. All 3 of those guys were in the Olympic finals. All 3, well, John Smith's match wasn't from the Olympic finals. It was from the semifinals versus Reynoso. But all 3 of them at the Olympics broke that on that high crotch crackdown position, which is popular in the US, right? It's a hot commodity in the US. But what happens is the Europeans, Russians, the Cubans, you get in on their leg, they just sit, break that shoulder off the hip, right? And they take you for a ride. And so Abbas got hit with that maybe 2 or 3 times in his Olympic finals with Matt Black. You watch that match. Go back and watch the semifinals with Smith and Reynoso, overtime, it happened. Go back and watch Zeke Jones versus Lee Hock Sun, it happened. So what that's telling me is those are 3 of the best America's ever seen, right? I mean, John Smith is the best we've ever seen in the United States. And they all got beat in the same position. So that tells me that's a no-go, no bueno. We don't get there because that position allows too much opportunity. So I'm going to teach kids not crackdowns. I'm going to teach them head up, double. If you don't want to do a double, come off to single. You don't want to do a double or single, come off to your high crotch, but everything's the same. Body alignment's the same.
And how did you start working with JB? When did that start?
His high school coach actually brought me in for summer training, and which I thought was cool for them. So Vince Jones was on the team. Vince wound up being All-American at Nebraska. JB, we already know the story there. Jamel Jones was on the team. And Vince's dad, even though I was training them there, Vince's dad would load everybody up into their car, had his little raw 2-for-1 sticker on the window, and he'd bring the guys to practices. So I thought that was really cool. I was like, here's a dedicated man. Here's a committed parent to their kids and trying to give them the best opportunity. So I like that. I respected that. I have an affinity for people who respect what I do and what I can bring to the table, and will go out of their way and bend over backwards to make sure that they give their kids the opportunity to be around me. I respect that. So, in kind, I gave a lot of that back. So during high school, I was giving training to Vince, to JB, Jamel, and I'll get to that in a second. So I was getting all of those guys some exposure to the game, some college level training. But at the same time, those guys they already had a club before they met me. So they are already training with somebody before they got with me. So, they had something going on with another club. They were dipping and dabbing with me. Plus they had their high school coach, who was obviously, he brought me in. He's kind of had a high school coach that wanted to stay on top of those guys and have them doing stuff all the time. So they were seeing stuff all the time. So I was a very small piece of the puzzle for those guys during the high school level. Very small. It was a piece of the puzzle, but I was a very small piece of the puzzle. So anything that I was putting together, dual teams and stuff like that, I always had all of those guys in. Now, the only one that was coming on a consistent basis throughout high school was Jamel. Of those three that I named, was Jamel. He came more than Vince. He came a little bit more than JB. So, but when we had dual teams and I'll put my dual teams together, all of those guys would be on the team. Other guys would be on the team. So our dual teams were, I would put my dual teams up against anybody. Our dual teams were ridiculous. The talent level. And obviously we got an Olympic champ on our team. And even in high school, JB wasn't the guy, as people think of the guy. He wasn't it. In high school, I won dual tournament he went to. He got beat twice by Nick Nelson. You remember Nick Nelson?
I don't.
Right. So that tells you everything you need to know about that. So JB's this Olympic champ, and then in high school, he's losing twice in the same weekend to Nick Nelson. No disrespect to Nick Nelson, because that year, in a 365-day period, Nick Nelson beat Jordan Burroughs twice. He beat Scotty Winston, who was a Fargo national champ, BCD East champ, was ranked #1 in the country, along with JB twice. And he also beat, Nick Nelson also beat Frank Molinaro. I'm sure you're familiar with. So Nick Nelson he's a Shaler boy. And he had a twin brother, so they both were pretty good. Nick was a little bit better, and they both wound up going on to UVA. But anyway, so yeah, we had guys losing, and I had J.O. on our dual teams for years. J.O.'s been around us since he was like 8th grade. So his cousin, Alex Mead, and J.O. is not a raw 2-for-1 guy, but he's raw 2-for-1, if you know what I mean. So he's not in a room, but he's always around us. And training with Alex all the time. Alex is like, here's rub the tummy, here's low single water. So he wrestles a lot. He has a lot of raw 2-for-1 elements in him without being in the raw room on a routine basis. So he's a raw kid without being a raw kid. And
I just, not just now, but about 10 minutes ago, connected the raw 2-for-1. Take him down, let him up, 2-for-1. I'm with you now. Okay. So you've obviously watched a tremendous amount of wrestling. Who are some of the top guys who have influenced your philosophy, either domestically or internationally? John Smith obviously being one.
So that's a good question. So I could take something from almost anybody. So Artur Tomazov, who's a 3-time Olympic champ, 3-time, and one of them got stripped. But as he said to the IOC, come and get it. You want to come and get this gold medal from me? You come over to my house and get it. And I don't think he's got any knocks. I don't think anybody knocked on this man's door. But anyway, but he's a 3-timer, and he had, like all heavyweights, it's collar tie, it's push pull, right? So one of his favorite things is he could do a slide by with one arm. So you see most people do a slide by with 2 arms, and he would do a slide by with 1 arm and then take the free hand, and instead of grabbing the head or the arm on that side, he'd go to the leg. So I mean, here's a heavyweight, and I'm learning something from a heavyweight, and I'm a middleweight/lightweight. So to me, I can watch almost anybody and pick something up from anybody. So whether or not I put it in my style or not, as I was building myself up and learning the game, I didn't really think that I needed to take everything that everybody was doing and add it to my game. I think that's silly. I mean, you watch a football team, they have a style. You watch a basketball player, he has a style. It's not like he's doing that. LeBron's not doing everything that everybody is doing. Tom Brady's not doing the same thing that Lamar Jackson is doing. He's just This is what I do. I'm just going to be the best the world has ever seen at what I do, which is, I really was on more of that, which is, I just wanted to be the best at what I did. I didn't need to do what other people were doing, but I did want to see what other people were doing. It always intrigued me to watch guys and to see how their brains work and what they were using as setups, entry level attacks. How are people getting to people's legs? And the more extravagant and exotic somebody's setup is, I mean, usually it works more, right? So the more advanced the setup is, the more times that setup can work on everybody, not just on Tom and Steve down the block here, but, you know, Rashid and Jamalov down overseas as well.
Down the Caucasus Mountain.
Caucasus Mountain. So you got to have something that works against the higher level. And, you know, I was in love with that stuff. So as far as my style, conceptually, the 2-for-1, that's Jack Kuvo. That is not up for debate. Conceptually, the 2-for-1 concept I got from Jack Kuvo, but his style of wrestling wasn't my style of wrestling. You know, he liked the collar tie, he liked the hand fight, and he would just hit the single to one side, which was really good for him. And from what I understand, he worked a little bit with Jo on that, but Jo does the same thing. So it's tricep, armpit, tuck, wrap to the opposite side. So that's Jack Kuvo, and you see Jo doing a lot of that as well. So I did a little bit of it just because I was watching Jack Kuvo a lot, but it just wasn't for me. I mean, I did a couple of them. It wasn't I preferred space, distance, attacking from here. And when I see guys wrestle like this for 6 or 7 minutes, to me, it's like watching, you know, 80s football where it's just hand it off, run, hand it off, run, hand it off, run, hand it off. My style is more like 5 wide receiver sets, receivers running all over the place, guys going deep, a quarterback that can, you know, so my style of wrestling is more wide open, more than it is turn around, hand it off, turn around, hand it off.
Yeah. That's interesting because your early tapes from the Iowa Public Television, you know, a lot, as much as those Iowa guys are wide open, a lot of it's ear to ear, heavy collar tie, kind of drudging around the mat until someone breaks and then getting into it. But I mean, they did have some phenoms too at that time that could attack from space, but a lot of it was from that heavy hand, heavy collar.
95%, I would say 95% of the Iowa guys were contact, because that's the way Gable taught it. So it had a lot to do with, you know, rerouting the head in here, tugging on the armpit, passing the arm through, snapping arm. So his offense was the way that he's teaching it, the way that he wrestled. So again, I'm not saying that I watched it so much to take it and be like, that's what I want to do. I watched it because I was learning.
Yep.
I was just paying attention to it, whether or not, even if I clapped and say, man, that was pretty cool how they did that, didn't mean that I was going to do it. It's just, I was learning the sport and trying to figure it out. Again, didn't have the dad, didn't have the personal training coach, didn't have the off-season exposure, didn't have the 10, 15 years of experience like most college kids. So an average 20-year-old college kid has 15 years of experience. Me at 20 years old, I had about less than 15 months of experience. Totally different ballgame. Not even in the same stratosphere as these guys. So I was just watching to learn how. I watched so much basketball and football, I could tell you anything. What hand Tony Dorsett liked to put the ball in, which direction, what plays he liked. I knew all of that stuff. Basketball, the same thing. Wrestling, I knew nothing. I had no history of wrestling, no exposure. I had no family members that were exposed to it. You know, my mom and my grandmom were my parents, and they were the ones that pushed me through. And it's like, they didn't know anything about wrestling other than go get them. Shoot, Johnny, shoot. Like, what does shoot mean? There's a million shots. So which shot do you want me to take here? So nobody in my family had any understanding of the game other than they just wanted to support me as a, you know, as a family member, as a grandson and a son.
Isn't that crazy how much football and basketball kids watch as opposed to wrestling back then?
Yeah.
I mean, truly hours and days worth of watching versus wrestling before the internet. Pretty insane.
What's on TV? If you turn on 3, 6, and 10, Jersey, it's 3, 6, and 10. Philly, 3, 6, and 10. You know, what's on TV? The NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL.
Yep.
Where's wrestling? Right. You're not going to see that. So your stars early on, my mom and my grandma both were always taking me to NFL games, always taking me to NBA games. So I was being exposed to these athletes. So I spent the first 10 years of my athletic life admiring and idolizing guys that were in those fields.
Yeah. When you were working with not Andy Matter, Brett Matter, I got him confused there. In the late 90s, the Dave Schultz incident was all too recent. What was the mood like in that pen room and in that wrestling era in that late 90s, just based on everything being so close in proximity to what had happened?
Yeah, that's a good one. So we spoke a little bit about this before, and it was weird. It was a weird thing. So for me, I'm an outsider in the sense that I don't go to UPenn, and I'll get to that in a second. But then also, I wasn't really a Foxcatcher guy. I was recruited to Foxcatcher by, you already know who recruited me to Foxcatcher. So I told you that a little bit last time. So I got recruited to Foxcatcher, and then once I got around to having the opportunity to go to Foxcatcher, that's when the John DuPont issue with Dave Schultz kind of unfolded.
Mm-hmm.
So that blew everything up. So not only for that man's family and his friends and everybody else that was connected to him, that blew that up. But even on a small scale for me, it was like everybody was going to Foxcatcher. So you had Foxcatcher or Sunkiss and a little bit of NYAC back then, 80s and 90s, early stuff, early to mid 90s. So those are your three homebodies. Those are your three stalwarts as a programs. But Sunkiss and Foxcatcher were like the two biggest heavy hitters. And so for me to get recruited, I'm a little Division III guy, haven't been wrestling all my life. For me to get recruited, right, to one of those programs was like a big move for me. So I was excited about that, looking forward to that. So the DuPont situation with Dave Schultz kind of shut that down. But Nancy, Dave's wife, she actually was smart enough to say, listen, I don't want this man's memory to die. And I'm going to keep it going. And he would love it if we had people who really had a passion for the sport, still had an avenue of which to train in. So she created what was known as the Dave Schultz Wrestling Club, right? And his widow, by the way, but created the Dave Schultz Wrestling Club. So the Dave Schultz Wrestling Club, I still wasn't invited to that either because that wasn't mine and it wasn't Foxcatcher, right? So she doesn't know that. So when Brett got into UPenn, Brett was in the UPenn room practicing all the time. I was there all the time. So I was practicing all the time with Brett. And he was like, man, you should go over there and work out with so-and-so and work out with so-and-so. And I was looking at these guys and were like, man, these guys trying out for like the Olympic team, Brian Dolph and guys like that, Trevor Lewis. I was like, I'm not there. You know what I mean? I'm not there. He was like, you should go over there and work out with him. And so he's the one that pulled me into the Dave Schultz Wrestling Club. So then I got on the list for the Dave Schultz Wrestling Club, and I was like, man, thank you, Brett. That was a big move. Like it was good to see him give back to me a little bit with me giving to him all that time. So he gave me the opportunity. I got in over to Dave Schultz Wrestling Club. I was working out with Lewis all the time. I was working out with Dolph all the time, and it was great. It was a great opportunity to have that exposure. So Nancy, what she created was she in a tough situation, a tight, tough situation, she still created something and allowed her flower to bloom. And so she created that Dave Schultz Wrestling Club. And then that just, she's not going to let everything fade. So that was a smart move. And then it was a beneficial move because guys. That
was all out of UPenn too, the Dave Schultz?
It was right at the UPenn campus. So I saw, Brandon Slade was there all the time.
Yeah.
Yoshi Nakamura wound up being on a team at UPenn. UPenn had a really good team at that time. Roger Reyna, the head coach, he's awesome. He's still awesome. He was an awesome guy. I haven't talked to him in years, but he was an awesome guy in the sense that he was letting me in the room before I became Dave Schultz Wrestling Club. He was letting me in the room and working out. And he has a nice little video. They have a little video corner. It's a couple of videos for each guy. And then I was over there all the time because I was like, Brett, we need to watch this match. Brett, we need to watch it. So we were always in that corner of that video room, just or video area, and studying. I liked Rogers that he didn't put any restrictions on me in that sense and allowed me to help out as much as I could. And I thought that was pretty awesome. And then with the Dave Schultz Wrestling Club, then that just allowed even more, accessibility. So I took advantage of all of that.
Man, I've heard that between Clint and I keep saying Andy, Clint and Brett Matter, you can't find two dudes who are more stand up, more like morally sound and just like disciplined. I mean, can you attest to that? And what sticks out to you?
Yeah, both of them are top flight. I'll tell you even something even way back, even before. So Delran High School, Dennis Smith, I'll tell you, he's one of my favorite coaches. He's an opposing head coach. So they're from Delran, I'm from Morristown. Our towns are like this close.
Okay.
So I used to see Dennis Smith all the time, every dual meet, every tournament, like any district tournament, region tournament, they're always there. He was a great guy. So he actually wanted me to bring me in as their assistant coach. So they had Mike Jackson as the assistant, one of his former wrestlers, stuff like that. So I always had a good coaching staff at Delran. And he was like, Johnny, you should come over. And if you want, man, you can come over and be the assistant coach. So I was going through like the high school and everything. And he was taking me on like a tour through the high school. And one of the hallways has like these, they put the grades up of the students. Like, I don't know how they do this, but they put the grades of the students like public in the hallway.
Love it.
Right. Yeah. Like Brett's like top on every, like he's obviously he's a state champ, right? But Brett's on the top of every scoring for any class that there is. Like he's got the best grade. He's just that kind of kid. Like, yeah, he was a really good on a wrestling mat, but that kid was a monster in a classroom. Like he took the same focus, commitment that he had for opponents on a wrestling mat as he did in the classroom. And like he was just very straight laced, very clean cut, took care of his business on and off the mat. And his brother the same thing. And then his dad and his mom, they both worked out where I was working, which was I worked out at Gold's Gym, which Mike Jackson owned the Gold's Gym. But I was working there. I worked like 5 different jobs at Gold's Gym. So I was there. I'm there at 4:30 in the morning. I'm opening the place up, and Brett's mom and dad are there ready. They're ready because they want to get on the treadmill. So they're all. So I used to see them all the time. Yeah, they're just a very committed family, awesome family. And I can't thank his dad enough, because his dad, before that was like, you should coach. First, he told me I should wrestle. I mean, he's one of the first guys that said to me that I should wrestle beyond college. So just to have that kind of somebody having that level of confidence in you was it builds you up a little bit. But then for him to hand me his son the way he did also was even better.
Isn't it amazing how the impact of a little vote of confidence from someone, it goes so far, and you never know who it's going to impact the right way, but if it lands, it can be just a tremendous mover and shaker in someone's life.
Absolutely. He might not need, I mean,
he doesn't even know. That's what I'm saying. Like, even if he doesn't realize it, that's why, like, anytime you see a young wrestler, not even a wrestler, it's like, why not give that person some positivity and some love? Because he may not even remember, like you said.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'll go a long way. It'll go a long way. Even the smallest, little conversation can go a long way. And that vote of confidence to me, now keep in mind, again, at that time, I'm looking up at everybody because I don't know enough about the game. So, and this guy's a 2-time national champ. He's telling me X, Y, and Z. I'm like, okay. And then that's going to build you up. At the same time, even more to the point, and a lot of parents won't like this, because we all, as wrestling coaches, have parents that are like, around all the time.
Yeah.
And Brett's dad, the 2-time national champ, would drop Brett off and leave. So he wasn't that kind of dad that was like over top of every drill that he did and walked him through everything and screaming and yelling at him and you stink and you better get better. It's like he took a totally opposite perspective and stepped away from the games. Like, that's the guy that's working with you. You're coming here to work. You two get together. I'm out. Right. And as he did that, that was just building me. I was like, man, it's for him. It wasn't just that he put him in my room with 100 kids, but the one-on-ones and letting just me and Brett develop and build a rapport together. It's just unbelievable as a family. They're just a great family. Brett's a phenomenal student. Clint ain't too bad himself. I mean, they both graduated from Penn, pretty decent. But mom and pop were A+ as well.
Love it. And I love that they let you in, because I have a sweet spot in my heart for first generation wrestlers. It's just, I really do, man. It's hard to describe. why or how I feel that way. Because like technically my dad wrestled, but like for a year, my grandpa wrestled for like a year. So it's basically first generation. And I can remember my mom and I going to these tournaments, feeling like idiots, feeling like outsiders, not knowing anything. And it was just it was a bummer at the beginning. And it kind of made you feel like you weren't welcome, you know? And so, but once you crack in, you're in, but it's like, I have a sweet spot in my heart for those first generation families. And I love when they reach out and ask just basic questions, you know?
Yep. Yep.
Let me ask you about this one. Darion, we'll wind down here pretty soon, but Darion Caldwell, I've heard you worked with him. Was he a Raw 24 kid or just one of the guys you kind of mentored throughout his development?
Yeah, he was Raw 2-for-1 kid too. We had Darion, I would give, because there's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's so much information. Man, we need to do this in parts. There's a lot of details to a lot of stuff. But the Darion situation is Darion was a style who already did like cradles and stuff like that. So he liked mat wrestling. I don't even teach mat wrestling in a room. So he already had that. So the element that I'm bringing to the equation is the takedown game. You know, the little bit of movement here, a little bit of level change there, a certain setup, how to finish on an attack, so on and so forth. So, you know, I'm imparting that into whether it's Darion, JB, or whomever. The one period, so we had a period there from 2009, let's say a 10-year period in NCAAs. There's a 10-year period where we had 4 national champs, Division I.
Wow.
So not include junior college because Jamel Jones won 2 of them. So I'm not even talking about Division II, Division III, junior college. Just Division I, we had in a 10-year period, we had 4 Division I national titleists, and we pretty much averaging. We had 6 finalists in 10 years, Division I. That's a lot for one program. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely one of the smaller clubs in the United States of America. Small numbers. I don't have classes of 100 kids. I don't have to break my groups up in there. Here's my high school group. There's my middle school group. I don't have any of that. I can have a practice with 10 kids. I can have another practice, might have 25. I can count on both my hands the amount of practices in 20 years, 25 years, 26 years, where I've had over 50 kids in a room for a practice. Like I can count it, like I'm probably at like 9. So my classes are very small, but the groups that I have, Darion's, JB's, the Vince's, the Jamels, the Cody's, the Marios, the groups that I have, the talent is we built the talent up. So I don't have the biggest room. So it's not about quantity, it's more about quality for me. And so from that 10-year period to have 6 champs in 10 years or 6 finalists in 10 years and 4 champs in 10 years is off the hook for Division I. From one period from 2011, so it was 1 year, 11 and 12. From 2011 and 2012 Division I rosters or collegiate rosters, I had 38 former Raw kids, Raw alums in college competing. That's just off of those 2 years of rosters. So 2011 rosters, 2012 rosters. And then when I posted that, because I was going through all of the names, I posted that and I had a couple of guys jump in and was like, J-Rock, you didn't put me on here. Like, so I had another 2, we're probably like 42 guys. Just in 2 years, we're on college rosters that were former Raw 2-for-1 guys. So that's kind of the stuff that I'm into. I'm into getting kids an opportunity to get, college is $50,000, $60,000 a year. Moms and dads, you're going to give me X amount of dollars a year, but this is really what the end game is. The end game is so that, Taylor Walsh, they $58,000 a year to go to Indiana. I got a kid going to Indiana next year. Tyler Lillard, he was, probably 60,000 now, right? For Indiana per year. So that's the objective. The objective is to give people opportunities to get and further their education while competing. All right. So you can compete a little bit. That's icing on the cake. You wind up being an All-American, you wind up being a national champ, but get that education. Darion graduated, JB graduated, they all got their college education. And then the wrestling was just, icing on the cake. And then JB just took it a couple of different levels. I was reminded by Zach to talk to you a little bit about Darion in the sense that a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people don't understand Darion, the balance. Who was more of an athlete out of Darion and JB? The better athlete was actually Darion. He was the better athlete. I mean, he had more athleticism than JB. So they're different athletes in general. JB is the better wrestler. long term. But the better athlete is actually Darion. A lot of people don't know that because he got hurt. So he got hurt when he tore his shoulder. He actually got 2 surgeries. He actually had to fly down to, I believe one time he went to California, and then another time he flew to Florida. He had a specialist work on his shoulder and try to get his shoulder to feel a little bit better so that he can at least be, functionable on the mat. And he still was just having trouble. He just really couldn't do it. But John Smith, when Darion he wanted to transfer out of NC State. So a lot of people don't know that. So that's an inside thing. So he wanted to transfer out of NC State. So he was like, J-Rock, I think I want to get out. I'm thinking about doing something else or going somewhere else. So I said, all right, let me make a couple phone calls. So I called X, Y, and Z. So one of those X, Y, and Z's was John Smith. I got an affinity for John Smith, so I'm always going to call John if there's something up. I got this kid, he's thinking about transferring in, blah, blah, blah. What's his name? Darion Caldwell. So we got into a nice conversation about it, and he remembered Darion at the time. And Darion hadn't placed yet at NCAA's. He hadn't placed yet. And John Smith's comment to me, which I'll never forget, is that kid can be an Olympic champ. I didn't say anything to him about Olympics. I didn't say anything to him about Worlds. I'm saying the kid wants to transfer. I'm thinking that this would be a good spot for him to make that move. And I know he would come there and eventually become an All-American, maybe a national champ, right? Even I didn't know he was going to be an undefeated national champ in OW. Yeah. Even I didn't know that. But, he made enough progress and had the capacity to do that. Just had to be put in the right spot, do the right things, and have the right timing. So John Smith, I thought, would be able to offer that. And John Smith said, man, that kid can be an Olympic champ. So John Smith saw even more in him than I did at that time, right? And but Darion wound up staying. He got All-American as a junior. He wound up taking 5th. He lost to Bubba, I believe, in the semifinals. He wound up taking 5th. And then sophomore year. Then junior year, he wound up winning it. And then senior year, he got hurt. But Darion is the best. He's of my top 5 athletes that I've got my hands on. He's definitely, 1A, 1B. He's one of the top athletes. If he had wrestled international, and if he would have been healthy, a lot of people don't know. Darion Caldwell at 65 kilos, if he was healthy and he wrestled over these last, because you see he's still fighting, he's still healthy. He just fought last weekend. Mm-hmm. So his body is still going. If Darion had a 10-year career in the game, the way JB did internationally, Darion would have won a world title. And maybe even what John Smith projected is maybe even win an Olympic title.
Dang. I mean, and a lot of people wouldn't even think about that because he didn't get a chance to get his skills out there, like you said, due to the injuries. That is, it's crazy. Everyone has some kind of, of course, everyone has a unique backstory, but there's all these little moments that, you don't think of him not placing his first 2 years and maybe transferring because he's so frustrated. Then he, pushes through.
Right.
And it's just, I know you have stories like that for days. And shout out to our friend Zach. I really like that guy, and he's just a wealth of wrestling knowledge and always challenging me with new points of view that I typically don't think of. I know we've been going for a while. I did just want to wind down with this. We've already talked about it. Name of the show, Wrestling Changed My Life. But, outside of the grit, outside of the determination, hard work, what's one thing the sport's given you that you often tell kids if they said, why would I wrestle?
I would say I have a lane. So the football wouldn't have given me a lane that lasted this long. Coaching. I mean, a coaching career, 25-year coaching career, the sport has given me a lane. I don't think I would have, no matter how good I would have gotten in football, I don't feel like I would have been able to coach football for 25 years once I was done playing football at whatever level I was at. Basketball is the same thing. What wrestling did is it gave me a lane, it gave me an actual platform. So, to be able to do what I've done for 25 years, 26 to be exact, and hopefully to put in another 25, I want to be Roy Pittman, in Portland, Oregon, who already has 50 years in the game. I want to be that. So in 25 years, I want to be able to have to look back and say, man, I really gave to the sport what I thought the sport gave me. It gave me some discipline, gave me some structure, gave me some guidance, gave me direction, allowed me to focus. It gave me a vessel to jump on and be aggressive and physical, and then you can step off of the vessel and then be, whoever the hell you want to be. And so for me, a lot of stuff is like which I wanted to share with you. Like, I used a lot of stuff in wrestling because I was in a music group. We were in a rap group. I've been in a rap group since I was in high school. So when I got involved in wrestling, I even was taking things that I was doing in wrestling and throwing some of it sometimes into the music. Just the concept of competition, how you approach big meets and the mindset and everything like that. So I was implementing a lot of that and streamlining it right into a lot of the music, the rhymes, the stuff that I was doing. So I'm very exact on everything that I do. So if I do a setup, I hear a lot of people say, when you get in on the leg, you want to fight like hell to finish. I don't agree with that by any stretch of the imagination. I feel like by the time I get to the leg, I should be a nanosecond away from putting a deuce on the board. All the work has to be done on the front end for me because I'm exact. So it's going to be the stance, motion, level change. Then it's going to be the setup. Then it's going to be the shot, head position, body position. And then the finish should be easy. So that's kind of where I was with it. And then I rhymed it that way. I put my music together that way where I'm very exact. I do all my stuff on the front end. So on the front end, I don't do a lot of freestyling. Freestyling is on the back end where you just somebody says a word and you rhyme everything to that word, or somebody says a topic, and then you rhyme everything to that topic. I was very much on the front end, which is I was prearranged everything. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and I want things to lay out like this. And then, so that's how I wrestle. Yeah. So I tell my kids, don't dive. Don't just dive in on the leg. You better have those first three things in place before you go diving in on somebody's leg.
I love it, man. I love the thoroughness at which you prepare it and you're in your system. I can just tell how meticulous you are with it. And, if I'm ever out on the East Coast, I would love to come into a practice and to see how you run the room. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
I missed you the other day. That would have been perfect time.
That was one of the most hellacious travel trips in my life. I missed a flight. My checked baggage ended up going to Newark. I landed in LaGuardia, had to catch an Uber from LaGuardia to Newark at like rush hour, then drive to Philly. It was horrible. And I was only in town for like 18 hours, and I didn't realize how bad West Philly was. I thought Penn. Stayed. Oh my God, I was in a horrible place. And the next day, all the guys were coming over for the interviews, and I was almost embarrassed, like where I was staying, because I didn't want them to think that that's the kind of operation I was running. But I thought Penn was in a nice area. I just didn't know. But I mean, of course, all the neighbors were super kind, and it was nice. But it was a crazy trip, just to say the least, man. Crazy.
Yeah, next time you come out, man, come in, you do dinner, you check out the practice, but they do the whole nine. So take your time. We'd definitely love to have you through here.
It'd be great, man. I really appreciate you taking some time today. J-Rock, always a pleasure, man. Thanks again for your time.
I don't want you to go. I want you to hold on for a second.
I'm here.
You got a minute?
I got it.
I'm gonna drop a verse for these young kids. All right. So I'm gonna put out a rhyme from when I was a senior in high school. And from our rap group, the VAA, Verbal Assault Alliance. And I've always been J-Rock. So it's just, I'm J-Rock. But I'll give you a verse. So this has no N-word, no B-word, no misogyny, no, nothing. I don't go any of those directions. I don't tell you how much money I make, how many drugs I sold, none of that. So this is rhyming without any of that. So just think about that as you're taking it in. But I'll give you a quick verse. Song is called Boundless. Boundless. This was the first verse. Ascent your content with a limit or a summit, a point at which you peak, a zenith you seek as I expand and extend contents from each end of the spectrum. Yes, there's always room for progress. The mind is boundless. In fact, it's a bottomless abyss. Releasing information to transmit, I absorb then utilize, record then modify each element, making the content efficient then disperse or insert in channels and research. The passage mapped as graphics, complex patterns emerge to the surface. If the substance is rugged, I run amok with the concept. Sounds at the pace, then I accelerate. Full throttle, without the bull, not verbicidal. I'll begin this era with some endless terror, then continue with spectacular, suitable vernacular, and roll over mountains of info with a vertigo boundless.
Man, that was awesome. Thank you for sharing that. There's a lot. I'm when I go through the transcripts, there's a lot there. I want to unpack it. That was, how many songs have you done, would you say, that you've like wrote?
So as a group, we've got enough for about 2 albums. I mean, we just didn't have that exposure way back then. As solo songs, I've done about 4. Boundless is one of them. Boundless and Warpath being my best 2. Jeff Moretti will tell you about, if you know Jeff Moretti, another PA wrestling coach, he will tell you about Warpath. Warpath was my first solo that we did, and Boundless. We opened up for a lot of stars, you know, KRS-One, if anybody knows about this, old school guys, Leaders in the New School, opened up for them. We've been around, done a couple of shows and things like that, small scale. Those were big scale names, but we were small scale. Right. And that's why we're opening up just as locals. And I stayed in the game writing lyrics and songs for years. I mean, I still write stuff now I wrote a song for JP leading up to the Olympics, for 2012 Olympics, called All I See Is Gold. Me, Kaz, San, a couple guys that we were on the same group from years ago. So you can check that. You parents can check that out. Kids can check that one out.
Is All I See Is Gold from you then? Is that what we're?
So that the term is from him.
Okay.
But other people have used the term. There's another girl that she has some song, but I used his term and then applied it to the song, and then wrote up a song for him for All I See Is Gold leading up to the Olympics.
We got to get the songs produced, get them out there on Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube. That'd be awesome.
Check them out. It's up on YouTube. You
it is. Okay, perfect. What's it under? All I See Is Gold, J-Rock?
All I See Is Gold. Yup. And just put it up. It'll come right up.
I'm going to put it in the show notes. I'm going to go listen to it right now.
Check it out, man.
Awesome. Thanks again, man. I really appreciate it.
You're the best, Ryan. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir.